Yeah, now we are live also. So, what we need to do in 354, Ajnana Hridaya Grantehe Nishesha Vilayastada Samadhina Avikalpena Yada Advaita Atma Darshanam. So now the question comes, where is the ignorance? The ignorance is in recollecting and reframing as soon as an object comes into the mind or in front of it. So let's say somebody comes and immediately recognize that, let's say, Shrihari or Bhatt or Lata. Then the moment that is done, it is going to create whirlpools of many things. So I might be liking what Bhatt says, or I might not be liking what he says, or what Srihari says, or what Lata says, or what Padma Shri says. And then this, I want to impress upon people that what I'm saying is right and what they are saying is wrong. All of this will start. Because there is Ajnana. Where? In the mind. And the mind is in the Hridaya. Heart. Grantehe. Knots. So it had knotted out. How do we knot something? We knot something by, number one, naming the body, which we have to name. Then naming every object we can see and giving it a role play, and considering it to be true. It is fixed, and hence we feel very happy because now that is not changing. The name never changes. So from the time the person has been born and named as so and so, that name exists forever. And then after his body is gone also, that person's name is Amara, non-death. So we keep on remembering it as the first death's anniversary and the second death anniversary and third death anniversary, like that, which showcases the mind's unwillingness to not to identify. So, Nishesha Vilayas Stada. This knot of ignorance is completely destroyed for Samadhina Avikalpena Yada Advaita Atma Darshanam. So when somebody is in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that is, when he sees an object, does not name it, does not identify it, does not dwell in it, does not do anything with it, then he sees that object from the beginning never had any name and form. It was just constructed in the mind. So his Hridaya, heart, will not yearn for having it. So now the problem with all of us is, we have a family which is etched out in the heart. That means in the mind. As soon as the consciousness falls on that, the mind immediately picks it up. Picks up to say that this is my son or daughter or wife or husband or office, parents, etc., etc. This will not go. So in the next life, the mind again would like to get re-established into wherever it should get re-established. So depending upon the good deeds done by the mind and the bad deeds done by the mind, through the consciousness which is the Atma, then it gets established again in another form suitable to its karma. Whereas if a person is in Nirvikalpa, Advaita Atma Darshanam. He gets the non-dual vision of the self, which means there is no self. The duality is I exist and something else also exists. Non-duality is I don't exist. Sat only exists. I don't exist. As we saw yesterday in the 352nd verse, Satchidananda Swarupa. That is the only thing which exists. And that becomes Advaita. There is no dual. So if we can cut like this the knots of ignorance, now you can see what the intellect can do. Intellect just walks besides the consciousness. Tvam aham idam iti iyam kalpana buddhi doshat prabhavati paramatmani advaye nirvisheshe pravilasti samadhau asya sarva vikalpaha vilayanam upagachet vastu tatvatah drishtya. Tvam, you, aham, I, idam, this, iti, like that. So you, I, this and that. Iti iyam kalpana, imagined, this one is imagined. Buddhi doshat is the defect of intellect. So the jivi represents the intellect, and the intellect can only do is to identify that this is I and you and this and that. Prabhavati paramatmani advai nirvisheshe. This intellect, which can do I, you and all that, fancies the self to be so. That means it cannot see anything other than itself. Whereas the actual self is non-dual and attributeless. Now this becomes a problem. When I say I am going to go to Vishnu Loka or Shiva Loka or Narayana Loka or this Loka or that Loka, it becomes attributes. So if anything that has an attribute, it is the mind which is doing it. So every God which is created in the mind will ultimately establishes itself in that. If I believe to be a human being, if I believe that I have a family, if I believe that I am working in so and so place and so thing and all that, and that belief slowly turns itself into faith. Faith doesn't have anything to reason out, but it is faith, it is experienced. So now I'm experiencing family life. So nobody can deny my family life. I have a wife and a son, I have a home, I'm working in so and so organization and I'm doing so and so. There are many things I'm not able to do at this point in time, but there are many things I can do. Now this loka, world, is created because of conceptualization. So if I believe that there is an attribute called as Brahma, there is an attribute called as Vishnu, there is an attribute called as Maheshwara, then I make a symbolization of that. Then I call it as Linga and this and that, and this is the Devi, this is how it is, this is where it goes, this is where I am devoted to or I believe it to be, I am having faith. What happens is that it is not dual, it is duality. Because the mind now exists by itself in the sight of consciousness. So whatever the mind feels, which is the intellect, it immediately manifests that, because that is what consciousness can do. So it doesn't see to be an attributeless, it sees itself to be filled with attribute. So all the Shrutis, that is why there is in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the Vedas talks more about Karma Kanda. It doesn't talk about liberation, and that portion is very less. And he is very right, because everything around is centric around the objects and its different facets. And when I believe that something exists in this way, what I have already done is to create that in the mind. So the mind creates all of this and believes to be attributes. So now when somebody says the gods have 4 hands, it turns out to be true. So if I meditate upon that god, after some time, when the consciousness is fixed on that object, that is, the mind is fixed on that object, the consciousness shines on it. So what happens here is that I see that god with the 4 hands coming in front of me. So pramana viparyaya, so this viparyaya happens. Now I can measure the god's height and the width and all that, because it is so true. Because that one is also consciousness and this one is also consciousness, and both are consciousness. However, that is a god and I am a human. Now that attribute filled consciousness can do much more things than this attribute filled consciousness. The reason here is that that God who is come in front of me is pure than my mind. That is, the mind of that God is more purer than what I am having. So now what happens here is that I start demanding whatever I want. So I want health. So immediately that God blesses and my body changes instantly. So who changed it? The consciousness changed it. The body did not change. The consciousness changed. But the mind felt that the God changed it. So this is how illusion happens. Now this is vikalpa. It's an imaginary. Whereas pravilasati samadhau asya sarva vikalpaha. When the truth dawns that this is an imagination of the mind and no imagination is possible, then nirvikalpa shines. The person goes on to nirvikalpa samadhi, and all these intellectual concepts, that is, Durga exists or doesn't exist, Parvati exists or doesn't exist, Kali exists or doesn't exist, Shiva exists or doesn't exist, Vishnu exists or doesn't exist, office exists or doesn't exist, like that everything is completely erased out. Vilayanam upagachet vastu tattva drishtya, simply get dissolved and one gets firmly fixed in that nirvikalpa. So the more we are having vikalpa, the worser it gets. Notice what is worser. It means that that mind will get established in that realm of existence, which again comes back to wherever it was earlier. So the more the punya phala, the higher it goes, the more the papa phala, the lower it goes. Meaning the mind get established along with what is called as Atma in the higher realm of existence called as Deva Loka or a Brahma Loka or whatever Loka it is imagined. Let us say I am a Bhakta of Krishna, then immediately the Krishna Loka gets created for me. and then I am drawn in that loka. So all the time I am in Krishna. Now the question comes, what is wrong with that? There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. The only thing is that it is rebirth. As soon as that Punya Phala ends, that consciousness again reestablishes wherever that mind has got the impression. So Vasana. So these Vasana again pull it back into a human realm or an animal realm or a ghost realm or a Naraka realm or whatever realm, or again stay back in the Krishna realm or a Brahma realm or Deva realm or whatever realm at that time that has got manifested. The consciousness job is to establish that mind wherever it is supposed to get established. It does not care whether it is an animal place or it's a human place or a Deva place or a Brahma place or whatever place. Or even if somebody has mastered Shunyata, it will get established in Shunya. So, or somebody has manifested or meditated upon the space, Akasha, it will get established in Akasha. So what Saraswati was saying in the Yoga Vasishta is true, that the Arundhati and Vasishta, as well as the Padma and that the wife of Padma, they never left that place. They are in the same place, but in a different plane of existence. So nobody goes anywhere. They get re-established in the same place because the mind is in a different plane. The consciousness creates that place for that being. Just like when the person comes from the womb, he doesn't know where he is. After few days, few months, it recognizes itself as mother and father and all that, and then it sticks to it. It doesn't know that it had nothing to do with this at all. It just landed. It's just like somebody blindfolded and a person has landed somewhere, doesn't know where he is, but the vikalpa starts. A vikalpa is that the other people will start to say that I am your father, I am your mother. And obviously that is true, because even before this child arrived, they were available. So the vikalpa is there. What that child doesn't know, that they were never its father nor mother. Never. It doesn't know. If it had stayed without connection and fought its way out, it would have got liberated. But it gets stuck. So badly stuck that it exactly does what other people were doing. That is, it develops itself in the mind that this is this, this is that, and all of it is in vikalpa. And then it gets married, and it again calls somebody as a wife, and then some children will come. Actually, there's a consciousness which is again re-established as a child. There is no child in the first place. It's just a consciousness re-establishing, but it is not seen. So then the child happens, and then the child happens, the child grows. When the child grows, it matures. When it matures, just like a tree or a plant or a shrub or anything, it displays its characteristics. And the story goes on. So if somebody leaves it to the intellect, that is, somebody uses the intellect so much, then what happens is it gets knotted in ignorance. If somebody knows what intellect is all about, that is, it just says you, I, this, that, and all of it is a defective way of watching or seeing or saying or whatever it is, then intellect will not interfere. If intellect doesn't interfere, then the manas doesn't have any impression. If the manas doesn't have impression, then there is no ego. ahankara. If manas, buddhi, ahankara are not there, then the chitta doesn't shine there. If the chitta doesn't shine there, a person will experience 356th verse, which is the next verse. Shantaha dantaha param uparataha kshanti yuktaha samadhim kurvan nityam kalayati yatihi swasya sarvatma bhavam tena avidya timira janitan sadhu dagdva vikalpan brahma kritya nivasati sukham nishkriye nirvikalpaha. Now if the person, let's go of the person, let's go of the personality, let's go of identification and just exist as Sat. We are not staying as Sat, we are staying as ourselves. So if we were to stay as Sat, then number one, immediately you will find yourself very serene. Just cut the naming right now and look it as a role. You will immediately become serene. There is no gap if you were to cut that. And you can really watch that every person is named. There is not even a person who is not named. Number two is that a person who was named doesn't even know that why he was named that way. So this is another truth what we can all see. Our parents named us and we named our children. It's not that they came with the name. So it's just an identification. So now if we were to cut that right now, including the name what has been put on my body or a label, then what happens? Immediately shantaha, peaceful, dantaha, self-controlled, param uparataha, kshanti yuktaha samadhim, perfectly withdrawn from sense object. Kshanti is forbearance or patience, to hold on to it, meaning not to get drawn by the sense objects, steadfast in that endurance, yuktaha samadhim. Such a state is nirvikalpa samadhi. Kurvan nityam kalayati yatihi swasya sarvatma bhavam. The seeker is always engaged in contemplating on that self in all the beings. Sarvatma bhavam. In everything he can see this same consciousness. Tena avidya timira janitan sadhu dagdva vikalpan. By this means the ignorance of darkness, tena avidya timira janitan, that is from where it started. Janitan means started or born, from which sadhu dagdva vikalpa, from the time that child is born, it is only in its vikalpa. So this whole vikalpa gets destroyed. Brahma kritya nivasati sukham nishkriyaha nirvikalpaha. That the seeker then lives as Brahman, ever blissful, free from bodily action and mental oscillation. That means there is no oscillations either way. Seeking something or removing something, both are not there. So the two pairs of opposites are gone. When the two pairs of opposites are gone, there is no dvaita. The duality is completely lost. If you need to fight, you need to have a concept. If there is no conceptualization, there is no fight. If there is an argument between A person and B person, it should be on the concept. One concept says that God is Sarvantaryami, and another concept is that God is not only Sarvantaryami, he is also having attributes. So that becomes a confusion notion, that when God is having attributes and when God doesn't have attributes. So then the fight starts. And then the argument starts, because now which God is better? Brahma is better, Vishnu is better, Shiva is better. And there are battles in history for the same purpose. Then comes different other religions, Abrahamic religion and this religion and that religion. Ultimately, people keep on fighting because of the savikalpas syndrome what we develop. That is, imagination becomes the major thing, and everything is imagined, including the universe. So somebody says that universe is expanding, some other says that universe is not expanding. Some says that there is dark matter in the universe, some say that there is no dark matter in the universe. So there is all kind of debates, arguments, issues, all of that. And all of them are in the imaginative state. They imagine whatever they want and either push it on somebody because that imagination works for him, or the other person tries to push his imagination on another person, because the personality is already created, which is again an imagination. So this is what mithya is all about. So if this is dropped, immediately all of this is gone. So when that is gone, 357 verse says that samahita ye pravilapye bahyam shrotradi chetah swam aham chidatmani te eva mukta bhava pasha bandaihi na anye tu parokshaya katha abhidhayinyah abhidhayinah. So samahita, hita is good, samahita is equally good. Ye pravilapye bahyam. Pravilapa, vilapa is speaking out or showing up. Pravilapa bahyam, outside. So the person is in samachitta, meaning he doesn't indulge in either negating or appreciating the outside world. Shrotradi chetah. Shrotradi, shrotra is hearing, like sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. Chetah, the light which appears in the mind. Swam aham chidatmani, the very ego itself is removed, and in its place the knowledge of absolute is got. Te eva mukta bhava pasha bandaihi. They alone, having attained nirvikalpa samadhi, are free from all the bondages of transmigration. Why? Because the consciousness does not re-establish itself anywhere now. It is done. The journey is completed. Because there is no bhava. There is nothing to be taken. And for that the mind should have some impression, and mind doesn't have any impressions. Na anyetu paroksha kathabidhayinah, but not others who, having only mental knowledge, merely blabber it out with others. So the person who have never experienced nirvikalpa samadhi, if he is an intellectual person, will read all the Vedas, all the Upanishad. He is able to do a very good discourse. He is appreciated by all for his intellectual knowledge, but it is only mental knowledge. It doesn't stay. Because the sense objects and the senses are so strong that the mind cannot let go of it. So it's only for those who are able to cut the senses from the sense object using vairagya, shama and dhamma. Now, the 358th verse is all about the upadhis. Upadhi bhedat swayam eva vidyate cha upadhi apohe swayam eva kevalah tasmat upadehe vilayaya vidvan vaset sada akalpa samadhi nisthaya. Due to differences in conditioning, ubhadi bhedat, swayameva vidyate, a man sees himself as full of diversity. So we are all diverse in terms of whatever we are. Cha upadhi apohe swayam eva kevalah, but by dissolution of this very conditioning, he gains back his own immutable self. Tasmat upadehe vilayaya vidvan. Hence, to the dissolution of the conditioning, the wise man, vaset sada akalpa samadhi nisthaya, should always devote himself with firm conviction and to be unshakably established in nirvikalpa samadhi. So, removal of all conditioning, paristhiti, in other words, conditions, creates a situation which is again a paristhiti, and each of these paristhiti are named. So when anything is named, that creates upadhi. When something is removed as a name, then he or she gains back their original existence without any name and forms. Sati saktaha naraha yati sadbhavam hi eka nisthaya kitako brahmaram dhyanan brahmaratvaya kalpate. The man who is intensely focused on the real, Sat, becomes the real through single pointed devotion. Sadbhavam hi eka nisthaya kitako brahmaram dhyanam dhyayan. The worm contemplating intensely upon the wasp, brahmaratvaya kalpate, is in due course transformed into a wasp itself. Now here Shankaracharya says whatever the mind predicts, consciousness makes that happen. If kitaka is the insect, brahmaram dhyayan, if that brahmara keeps on thinking about itself as a brahmara, brahmaratvaya kalpate. So there is a appropriate Sanskrit statement to that. Yad bhavam tad bhavati. This is exactly what happens if we don't know what we are doing. So if by chance a person is creating instead of nirvikalpa samadhi, he goes on to the savikalpa samadhi, then what happens? It is like a worm which thinks itself to be a brahmara and ultimately becoming that. So if I intensely believe that God exists with 4 hands, and then automatically it will happen. But it is an illusion of the self. As soon as that journey ends, back to wherever or some other destination. So it is very easy to get lost. Instead, the person should always look at the real, which is nirvikalpa. So today it's fully silent, so I'm finishing one shloka after another.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but
yeah, otherwise
only silent. I am listening.
These are all, that's what, because normally you will come and ask some questions, right? So there's no questions. It's all.
Because I have taken your maximum time last time.
So what Vilas is telling is, whatever we imagine in our mind, that will get created. So that is the.
Yadbhavam Tadbhavam. Yes, I am listening. Because today's session is after that yogi, right? What happens after realization?
Correct. After you reach Nirvikalpa Samadhi, what happens is what has been explained.
So Vilas, Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the realization, right?
No.
Liberation, right?
Liberation. You are out.
Liberation. But after liberation, what is there to do? Only Mauna.
Yes, you will do everything to end your journey. That's all. Simple.
Okay, you tell me then. Okay, I know that Chandrasekhara Bharati, his name, that Sringeri.
Correct.
So that person was there 3, 4, 5 days in that Samadhi without any problem. That is called Nirvikalpa.
Correct.
That means he is already, it's not realized. It's a liberated soul.
Yes. Including Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when he stayed for a week without anything.
Even Vivekananda also under that category?
Yes.
Oh.
You have to come out of Vikalpa.
Now, let me ask some people, the present gurus I will ask. This art of living.
I don't want to get into that deep.
Okay, no problem. Can I say Sriyam is already liberated?
All these people are realized. That is
realized is understood clearly. I am asking realization to liberation. It is a step change or it is a smooth change?
It is instantaneous provided they remove the conditioning. There's nothing called.
Okay, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
If they the realized people, yes, they come back to samsara again, get to realize and all that. But liberated people, once they're liberated, it's only once it happens, or they can again come back to samsara after liberation. Is there any possibility?
No, you can keep on interacting with samsara, but they don't get totally involved with it. Meaning,
my question is different. My question is, if you're already liberated, is there a possibility to come back to samsara again?
No. Then there is no.
Because you don't have, mind is already dropped.
Yes.
And there is now they're working as if they are Brahman.
No, they are working not as if Brahman. They are working in Brahman.
They are working in Brahman. Yeah. See, now my this one is Vivekananda. He is a liberated person. But his message was very clear that you have to make sure that you are going to, he has given a message to all youngsters. You have to go and take care of the people, they don't have food to eat. First make sure that everybody gets the food. So this message he has given as what? As liberated person.
Now there are two things, or rather three things. Number one, everybody cannot liberate everybody, or nobody can liberate anybody.
That's right. It's individual.
It's individual. Okay. Now, as a liberated person, what he has done is that he has seen the problem. What is the problem? What is the world's biggest disease which cannot be cured? It's hunger. Any living being requires food.
Yes.
That cannot be negotiated with anything. Food and water are two things that is required.
Yes.
So, a liberated person will not then say that give this or give that. He will say just ensure that water and food is provided to everyone. So this is the first thing.
Yes.
Second one, he doesn't get involved with the world, he gets involved with whatever little bit he has to get involved. So in the case of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa to Vivekananda, if you see, they got involved to the extent they were to be involved. And
yes.
And their biography also talks about that. Okay, including Chandrasekhar Bharati, he never intervened with the administration of the Sringeri Mutt.
No.
He was totally away from that. He put
Yeah.
some other person to manage, but he never did anything except for being in Samadhi. He used to talk to people whenever they wanted to talk, otherwise he is in Mauna.
Yes.
Same thing with Ramana Maharshi.
Yes.
So this is the second one, what you can see. And the third one is that when they are liberated, they don't go on saying that I am liberated. There's nothing to get liberated. What is liberation? You are in Nirvikalpa, that's all. What else is liberation? If you are not imagining anything, then you are liberated. So what is there to say that I am liberated? The moment I say I am liberated, it means that it is still imagination. And how does a person come to know that other person is liberated? By his or her actions. If he or she is able to do something which he or she is equivalent to consciousness, then it is liberation. So they don't go and say that, look, I am liberated, I have done this, I have done that. Okay, there is no name and fame being added to it. And the fourth point, most important point, is that when they do, though they don't go behind anything, the world comes behind them. They don't seek. There are seekers. Now, the difference here is subtle but very vast, is that a person can get realized that he is indeed the same as another person. That many times it happens. Even for a normal person it happens. Forget about the sages or whatever. But they are caught up in the samsara. Meaning, they are yet to give up that name, fame, glory, and this, doing that. That doing thing is there, right? I'm doing something. And that doing itself is an imagination, vikalpa. It is just a flow. It is nothing to do. The moment that doership comes, the moment that ownership comes, then it creates a lot of problem. It can be whoever, it doesn't matter. Naming it doesn't make any sense, but that is what we can see. So if somebody is fighting for something, for some cause, immediately that means that he is not in Nirvikalpa, he is in Savikalpa. Simple. It can be for a religious cause, it can be for an environmental cause, it can be for a spiritual cause, it can be for a country's cause, it can be for this cause, that cause, whatever can be the cause. They all are Savikalpa. And there is going to be effect. If there is a cause, there is going to be an effect. So if a person has experienced Nirvikalpa, he doesn't indulge. That doesn't mean that he doesn't interact. He doesn't indulge. And you can see these four things in the action of Chandrasekhar Bharati. But you see any other mutt head, they are in politics, they are in administration, they are doing many things. I'm not talking any religious head.
Yeah, I think that is clear. He is the only person, I think, as per my knowledge, not connected with anything.
Yes.
Except.
Yes, so he didn't wanted anything because there is nothing to take it from there. Even to an extent that he was not bothered about how Sharade is going to be worshipped in Sringeri.
Yeah, he was not bothered about any of those things.
Yes, but you see all other pontiffs are bothered about how it should be worshipped.
Correct.
So that is the difference, right? And there is I-ness and my-ness in that. It is my Sringeri. and that's it. So it's vikalpa. So the difference between the liberated and not liberated is the vikalpa. If you were let go of the vikalpa, then you are done. So otherwise this is going to keep on continue. Now somebody is very happy with
So it is also possible. There may be so many people. I read when you go from Gangotri to Tapovan. In Tapovan, one person met one sannyasi there, and that sannyasi, he asked him, "What is since when you are here?" He said, 350 years. Then he also said there are so many people here, living here for more than 400 years, 500 years there. And such people, they are all like liberated people, right? No way connected with anything with the society, and they are experiencing or practicing or enjoying that other side of that spiritual life.
No, the thing is like this. So now let us say we'll take a example of Babaji, and they say he is 700 years.
I'm talking about something similar people, yes.
So let's say he is 700 years, right? And 700, 800, whatever years. Now why does he want to stay for 700 years is a secondary issue, right? But nobody can find where is he. But there is transmissions which happens. So when there is liberation, there is nothing of these things which happens, because the consciousness is completely dissolved. It doesn't re-establish. So there are yogic practices which can increase your longevity. There are yogic practices when you drop your body, you can stay in the manasika swarupa, just like in Mantralayam. Sri Raghavendra, he said that I will be available for 700 years.
Yes.
Okay, so he went into Vrindavan in 1671. So 700 years from then, that means 2300 years, that is 2300 AD or CE, he will be there.
Yeah.
So now, is it liberation or it is realization? That's a question. If you were to ask, the vikalpa is still there, but it is pure consciousness. Absolutely agreed. Better than a human being. But still the consciousness is established in vikalpa.
Yeah.
So till that karma ends of 700 years, there can't be liberation. Because the mind has made sure that the consciousness survives or keeps it active till 700 years.
So once that is liberation is achieved, that person is fully in 100% consciousness mode. Actually, there is nothing called person.
There's
But
no
the consciousness will be there.
See, there is no person happens in realization. That is a realization. First thing. Now, does it mean that the mind wants to give up or it wants to continue? In that pureness. See, now it is having some siddhis because it is reflecting the consciousness. Now, does it wants to be continuing or does it want to end? If it gets caught in the service of humanity, just like Sri Raghavendra said, or in the Mahayana, there is a thing called as Bodhisattva. That means the person doesn't get liberated, he keeps on coming back to human world to help everyone. So if that is there, that means the mind wants to keep its existence forever. It's pure. I'm not saying it is dirty. The mind is not dirty. It is pure. It is purer than any other human being. But it still has to take the birth.
Yeah.
As a realized human being, not as an unrealized human being. Now that's a difference. Unrealized human being thinks that only he exists, whereas a realized human being knows that every being exists.
Yeah, complete. Yeah.
Right. So, but what is the change now? He has to undergo the same problem, right? He has to find food, he has to find shelter, clothing, and medicine. Maybe his health condition is better than any normal person. That also is okay. And he might be looking much better, he or she is looking much better in their physical. That is also okay. But does that eliminate the need to be born? 1 second.
Yeah.
So that is what we need to see between liberation and realization. So what we have to see is that if it is vikalpa, then I might be a realized person, but I'll have a better life, that's all. And in that vikalpa, if I am seeing Sri Hari at the moment of death, my mind is established in Sri Hari, what happens? I'll get established there, that's all. The mind get established in Sri Hari. If my mind is in Jesus Christ, so it gets established in Jesus Christ. If my mind is in, let us say, established in Buddha, and it get established in a loka called as Buddha. It's all in that imagination, right?
Yeah, correct.
So the Sanskrit...
So I should not have any such imaginations.
Yes.
Drop everything. Everything you drop it.
See, now our imagination is the family. You see what happens to us. Our 24/7 imagination is the family and work. So what is it going to happen at the time of death? Same. Continue. That having Sri Hari in the mind or having Krishna in the mind is far better than having this family kind of imagination.
That is right.
So what is the fate for all of us in the dying moment? Same one. Maybe with more money or little money, maybe in a better children or a worse children, maybe in a big home than in a smaller home, whatever it is, but it's the same. So let's say I have given lot of dana, I have done lot of good deeds in this life. Next life is even more better, that's all. So I'll get a better family, I'll get better children, I will get better prestige or privilege or big home. I might be able to go across the world 100 times, 1,000 times, a million times, let's say. Always flying between one country and another country, whatever it is. Or I can go in a steamer or in whatever, hovercraft to aircraft to this craft, that craft. Even go to space, come back. All that is possible, let's say. That's a max. And when I get that and I indulge, and then the ego gets created more and more and I feel I am enjoying it, then what happens? Next life, it's gone.
Yeah.
This is the problem with vikalpa.
So the attraction is this prapancha. That's the reason we are back. Samsara.
Yes. See, right now, but if you really watch ourselves, all of us, how much time are we in nirvikalpa, how much are we in savikalpa?
That is, we are always with samsara only. In our dream also, only samsara comes.
Yes. No, forget about any other. Let us say how much time are we spending with Sri Hari or with Vishnu or with Krishna or with whatever. How much time? 5 hours? 10 hours? No, not even 5 minutes. After this,
Yeah, even if we go to puja room, we only ask, request, God, give me this, give me that. Again, samsara only.
correct.
Without expecting, we don't do what you call prarthana. Means for us it is expectation only, sakama.
Correct. So now the difference between atheist and a thesis.
One minute here.
Wait.
Is there a meaning for prarthana as the prarthana word itself is samsara, right? Otherwise there is no prayer required. Meditation is fine, but no prayer.
Yes, that's correct. So now what is the difference between atheist and theist? Atheist is nirvikalpa, theist is savikalpa.
Yes, yes.
That is what it's all about. But that doesn't mean that they are all liberated. What I'm saying is that they hate. If I am an atheist, I hate. The moment hatredness comes, I'm back in a worse realm of existence, which is animal.
Yeah.
If that person was not hating, but he was not creating anything at all in his mind, he would have got liberated. The theist is the person who believes in God and he says that God has done this to me, God has done that to me, God will take care of me. But if he had 100% gone into that, savikalpa, he would have got established there. So both the theist and the atheist, they both don't do it 100% of the time. So they come back to the same place or to a worse place than what they are today. See, now let us take some debates which happens either on internet or whatever. Like that one what we had, that Saraswati river. Does it exist or doesn't exist? Let's take that as an example. It's Vikalpa, yes or no?
Yeah.
But there is proof that Saraswati existed. So don't you feel happy that yes, Saraswati existed? Anybody would feel happy. But is that true right now? It is not. But then the Vikalpa makes that enjoyment possible. So I feel so happy to be born in this country because there is this Saraswati river is there, Vedas is there, that is there, this is there. So what am I really meditating upon? To be reborn in India.
Yes.
So that means I am ready to take birth and do all the funny things which were to be done. Right? Again I am going to lose the parent. Again I am going to lose the children, wife, husband or whatever it is. Right? So I am willing to take that.
Yes.
So this is the Savikalpa is all about.
Yeah. Okay, Vilas, shall we continue tomorrow?
Yes.
Meeting is.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Fine then. Good day. Bye,
Yeah,
everyone.
good. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.